On September 10th, life was perfect. We had 2 kids, Bobby and Jeff, working up in New York, living up in New York. We were on a pedestal on the 10th.
I was having a lot of fun. I guess the only sort of downside was that I didn't get to see my mom too much. You know, it's just being a kid, you want to be out doing stuff, and like I said, she was commuting to the city every day.
I was not in a good place in my life on the 10th of September. I had spent some time with Frank, and that was the good part.
On the 10th, I'm on the beach, obviously with my mum and my wife and 2 kids. They were probably 6 months, 18 months at the time, so you're doing stuff like you do, playing, you know, in the sand, building sandcastles, and just, you know, enjoying that time. And, you know, that's how we kind of imagined the rest of the holiday would pan out.
Well, prior to 9/11, I was involved in activism, United Nations group, and the idea was that we would work kind of like the United States on an international level. So when 9/11 happened and the subsequent change in atmosphere, it was really hard to talk about anything that made sense publicly because it was kind of a unilateral United States world that we were going to do whatever we wanted, and it was going to be violent, and it was going to be warlike. My name is Robert Griffin. I'm a psychologist, and I went to school at Penn State and Marywood University in Pennsylvania. Like most, I get up and get coffee and start to get to work. Some people go through the trauma of the loss and the violent death, and then also go through the trauma of finding out that things aren't as they seemed, or that there's problems that hurt in other ways. So the trauma initially is disorienting. How do we fit in the world anymore? Am I a father? Am I a son?
I just got a text from Jeff. We have to be there at 10:07 tomorrow. Can you get the sugar, hon?
Yeah.
Did I put in enough water? Yeah, I'm good. I left some in there from earlier.
When you have a child die, it's a very tough event for families. Some people do pull together. It depends a lot on who they are before it happened, and they seem to be made of the right stuff to be able to support each other and to stay as a family and also enjoy their grandkids.
One day at a time, right?
Yep.
Okay, I guess the best thing is to text Jeff back and tell him that you'll go with Zoe and I'll go with Danny.
That's great.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
I'd rather travel to Schuylkill that early in the morning than in the afternoon, that's for sure.
Both of us will get to see
Yeah.
see the kids.
I don't know what the scene is, but that's Jeff and Bobby there. It's a good friend of mine. I just went to his gravesite.
It's been years since I wore a wedding band, and now, because we got these at our 50th, I want to wear it all the time.
Do you know when I lost the first one?
I have it in my drawer.
You still have it?
I found it, yeah.
Here's Jeff and Bobby. I forget what this was. Probably he was in Princeton or just had left Princeton. He left Princeton in '97. And this is, of course, Bobby, I'm sure it's at Princeton. I don't know if it was part of graduation.
And then that's why it's hard to leave. We have so many memories here.
And we called this a starter home, right?
Yeah, we started and ended.
We started and ended. This is down Cape May. Might have been the last weekend we saw Bobby. This was his fiancée, Jen. That's right, they weren't engaged. Jeez. And they were to be engaged that following week.
He hadn't given her the ring when he died.
Yeah. It's such a great photo. It's probably the best photo of him. They used to share a room, but as Bobby got older, he wanted his own little room. Of course, we've revamped it. There was a bed here. This was June 21st. Bobby just loved to write. Phenomenal writer. And just to give you an example, when he went to when he was in third grade, I just never forget this. I forget the teacher's name, but we were sitting there after the interview. Of course, he was doing great in class and all that. But all third graders seemed to do great. But she said, "Let me tell you something, Bob. Though I'm telling you right now, save your pennies." She said, because this kid's going to Harvard or an Ivy League school. Little Bobby. Bobby was on the right here with Helen.
It's just hard to believe, though. I mean, when I look at those times and think about Bobby as a little boy, it's so painful to think he's not here. He's in New York. He's fine, because that's where I left him. I see him as a little boy, and then he's gone, and it's almost like a little bit of like guilt in there. Like I wasn't able to keep him alive. Friends said to me, "I can't believe you're still going up to New York." And we couldn't get enough of it, because that's what he loved. He loved being up there.
I mean, a lot of people won't go to Ground Zero, but I just don't know how people can just walk away from it.
You have to understand, not everyone can deal with that. I know I can't. I want to just think of Bobby as whole and perfect.
I don't know. That's what's bothering me about people, that they can't look at what happened that day.
You can't judge other people by what you're doing. This is your journey. This is your way of going through the tunnel to get to the other side. You need to do this. I couldn't go.
Why can't you do it?
It's not going to bring him back. It would be wasted time to have me in the position you're in.
It seems
Thank God you do it, though.
It seems like I'm almost ordained to do this for some reason, because
I know you feel that way.
Because no one does it.
She's stuck in the marriage. She's stuck with Bob, and it's obviously painful. And she does what she needs to cope and to basically survive.
When it gets more morbid and you describe certain aspects of it that I can't handle, I think it's time for me to just let you talk, so I think I'll do that. Excuse me. Okay. Catch you later.
All right.
So I will say about Bob McIlvaine is that one of the things that impressed me about him is that he has grown over the years, from what I could tell. And this trauma has kind of refined him.
On September 10th, life was perfect. We had 2 kids, Bobby and Jeff. Bobby graduated from Princeton, working up in New York, living up in New York. We were on a pedestal on the 10th. Then September 11th came.
Something hit the World Trade Center, huge explosion. We got a plane that crashed into the Trade Center. You saw an explosion at the Twin Towers. Yeah, there's a lot of calls.
This is going to be the event of the century.
Helen calls me. The tower's been hit. She still wants to turn the TV. I had turned the TV on, and then she called and she said, I can't get a hold of Bobby. She immediately called him, and there was no answer. But of course, we didn't think anything was wrong, because he worked at Merrill Lynch, was right across the street from the towers. He was in work, and I said, look, I have to leave.
It's really bad, Mary. It's very bad. Did the building collapse? Yeah. Oh my, the whole building? I don't know if it's the whole building. I'm so crazy about it.
So Merrill Lynch, of course, we were talking to Merrill Lynch immediately, and I went up there to look for him. And there was so many people down at Ground Zero walking around the area just looking for people. I think we called we found out where he was. He was at the coroner's, okay? But I don't know if we found out right there. He said, they had a wallet. That's how they found out. We had the wallet. In fact, I got the wallet right here. This is a biohazard thing. I don't think you can see. I mean, I've had it open many times, but this is a biohazard. This is the wallet that they had. They had, in other words, we found out they had a full body, except for, and I'll show you what happened to him. but Wallet was one of them. Now, at that time, you could everything was fine. Everything's disintegrated in here over years. But I think they had Bobby's license. And Helen went up to the dentist, and they actually got x-rays. Helen brought the x-rays down, and it was a match. So the next morning, we took him home. And believe me, we're one of the lucky ones. Because so many people didn't get bodies. Nothing. And we actually got not a full body, but we got a body to take home and bury. And we're so grateful for that.
Whose grief is it? Whose loss is it? In some way, the government has claimed the loss as their own. Folks were told how to feel, what to think about it, and it adds to their pain when it's used for other types of policies that have nothing to do with it.
We went to war, and there goes the authority thing. I didn't believe it was necessary to go to war because of Bobby. I know Bobby would have said, "What are you, nuts?" And this, I can't give you an exact time of this. I think it was July 4th, but I've been to so many demonstrations over the years, and of course around the world, but I think this was in Philadelphia, and it was a candlelight type of thing. But again, I've been to so many of them. I just can't place it. I always wore a picture of Bobby. I haven't been doing that as much as I did before. He would have been 100% against the war, and I was. Helen and I were both 100%.
Conflict is part of our nature. We have a way of identifying the us versus them, or the other. And so that leads to all sorts of problems where the other is not considered in there as fully human, because it's hard to get people to fight wars. People don't hate on their own. They have to be given a story.
Like when I got arrested down in Washington, D.C. after a protest, maybe I didn't want to go to jail, so they arrested us, took us away in a paddy wagon, and then paid the fine. But everyone agreed to that, so not some people were getting arrested, so forth and so on. But so I can't tell you. I would think that would be the first big protest, because Helen and I were doing the Peaceful Tomorrows, and with that we did the protest with Peaceful Tomorrows. And I actually went to the commission hearings thinking that we would actually get something done. I kept that hope alive. But Condoleezza Rice on August 6th, and she just bullshitted the whole time. I mean, even the commissioners were getting so frustrated with it. But see, in those hearings, each person that's asked a question, they couldn't go on for 15, 20, 25 minutes to grill you. Listen, Condoleezza, you're not telling us anything. Let's get to the facts here. But no, they get 5 minutes, and she filibustered through it. And I just started, I said, I won't say it right here, but, MF this, is no good sons of bitches. And Canadian Broadcasting, they heard me, so they wanted to hear this. And from there, I just changed direction. That's when I decided, well, I'm not going to do Peaceful Tomorrows anymore. I'm just going to talk about what happened on 9/11. Hey, my man.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
My name is Tony Szamboti, actually formerly Anthony Szamboti, and I'm a degreed mechanical engineer. Are you still in the same place?
Oh, yeah.
Near Fort Washington?
40-some years now.
40-some? How long?
Bobby was 2 years old when we went there.
Wow.
So he would be 46?
He was 26 when he passed away.
Yeah, so it's right, he's 46.
46 years old.
Good memory, man.
Well, I know he was 26 when it happened.
I had to think about that.
The interesting thing about engineering that I can say is problems, the way they're solved is it evolves. The solution evolves. You have a subconscious mind and a conscious mind. Your conscious mind can only handle so much at any given time. Your subconscious mind is a vast storehouse or warehouse of all your life experience. And what happens, you hear the old expression, sleep on it? That's the way difficult problems are actually solved. And if there is a solution, it'll come, it'll evolve, it'll converge. And that's why engineering's fun to me, because you're thinking about things, you're trying to solve this problem. and you're musing or mulling it over. And sort of that's, even with 9/11, that's the way it worked with me looking at these buildings. Imagine myself in the basement of a large skyscraper in these huge concrete encased columns. And, like a parking garage or something. How did it just completely give up the ghost?
So this didn't happen until 2000, 2007, 2008. I really didn't have the guts enough to go up and find out exactly what happened to him, okay? So this has been sitting there. And of course, the first thing we get is a picture of what happened. All right, now this is how I started coming out, finding out, what I feel happened to him. So we didn't know for sure. A lot of people thought, family members thought that maybe he jumped. His friends said that no, he was running away from the building and he got hit by falling debris.
Bob's a decent guy. He didn't, who wants to have their 26-year-old son killed in that kind of fashion where, his body is partially destroyed.
In this, his right arm's missing, okay? In this, from his nose down, his entire face is missing. Okay, so in other words, everything was blown, his eyes are missing, nose, everything is blown out. Back of his head is intact, but, there's some fractures, okay?
And all the wounds to his body were from the front. No
Right.
wounds on the back, right?
Right.
So that would indicate explosive force.
Can I just read you something? And it's taken a long time to get to the point where I am right now. But the story of 9/11, this is coming right from the 9/11 Commission hearing. They spent 2 lines talking about what happened to the buildings. A jet fuel fireball erupted upon impact and shot down at least 1 bank of elevators. The fireball exploded onto numerous lower levels, including the 77th, the 22nd, the West Street lobby, and the B4 level.
You expect us to believe this fireball came down and then exploded. What explosions are caused by rapid release of energy from a confined substance. The fireball's not confined.
Ground floor, the lobby, flowers, things, they weren't singed or anything. I have documentation that he was found outside the building.
This was before the buildings came down.
Well, but when they picked him up, he was outside the building.
Right, but the building hadn't fallen yet. Is that true?
No, of course not. He
Right. He was one of the first ones.
Well, how you can tell when the report on him, he had rigor mortis hadn't set in, so that's when you can really tell.
I know when.
So it's probably less. He got to the coroner's less than 2 hours after he died, less than 2 hours. And what happened? I think what happened is Bobby was walking in and decided to go up to the floors, and I think he was hit as he was trying to walk in. Because of the nature, his whole face was just blown off. He lost his arm and he was blown out of his shoes. So with that, I stick by that story, but then I've gone so much further than that. Again, I want to know who killed him and why.
Somebody said to me one time where a cover-up is only 6 inches deep. You imagine a big layer of concrete, but it's a mile wide. So unless you dig down vertically, you can't get under it. You can't see out to the edges of it.
We're up to, in 3 minutes, you're doing another 30 seconds. Or should we just ruin his tea and take it out now? It's true though, it does make a hell of a difference. There's no point doing squeeze 30 seconds. You'll get an absolutely rubbish cup of tea.
I'd like most of this to be edited out, please. My name's Maureen Lucille Campbell, and I live in Hassocks, West Sussex, about 8 miles from Brighton. And I've been retired for many years, since I was 55, 21 years ago. Probably only came in about 3 or 4 that morning.
We were so hungover. Honestly.
Hungover, and they look
like
like criminals.
Rob, you're still drunk.
Oh, I know.
Well, the 3 boys, I'd say different in a number of ways. We've got Matthew, the eldest.
Yeah, my hair. It's where I'm at right now, frustrated and pissed off with current events, but in particularly, my fight for the last 20 years. And so it's where I'm at. A little bit like this up to the system. Yeah, for the wake that we had, memorial with no remains. This was, I think, 30th September.
Yes, it was.
That to me is just a classic photo. My name's Matt Campbell. I live in the south of England, in a small village in Sussex. I have a degree in mathematical physics and a master's in applied mathematics, and I have a second master's in scientific application software.
And Robert, the youngest one, was most like, we like the quiet life. And if someone said 2 and 2 made 8, we'd say, yeah, that's fine. We don't like confrontation and just let it go.
Yeah, my name's Robert Benjamin Campbell. I live in Kemah, Sussex. This is in West Sussex.
Rob was about 5 years younger than me. It was sufficient of a gap that in my head he's always the little brother.
I had a good friend, Nick, who had his own pub. What we did is, for Jeff, we had his wake there. So all his friends, family, everybody came there. And what they did as a surprise for the family was they had a very good friend who was very good at doing paintings. And they did a painting of Jeff. And my friend was like Jeff a lot, if you know what I mean. Yeah, looked up to him.
That's Jeff's James Bond
moment.
moment.
Yeah, coming out the...
I think he loved that, didn't he?
Outgoing, very sort of smiley, lots of charisma, good nature, generous spirit, always, good at listening and making you laugh. He's 4 years older than me, so there's a bit of a gap, but we always looked up, to Jeff more than Matt. Sorry. He was a bit of a nerd.
Both Matthew and Jeff really had their dad's brains, really clever. Robert always said the youngest, the store of brains ran out when it was his turn to be born.
Both, finished uni. So Jeff finished, I think, a year before me. And he started to travel, and he definitely kind of switched from, I'm going to work in a bank, because I think he realised the trading route wasn't going to happen. And just basically became a specialist. His area was risk. With that, Reuters, who he eventually ended up working for, had products that worked in that space.
This is Caroline. They went up to London and took photos. Phoebe's christening, isn't it? Yes, that's a little church where we actually had the memorial. Quite a glamorous shot of them. And they went up to London. I don't quite know where he is there.
I think it was early 2000. Worked for a client in Manhattan for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. I can't remember. So staying really close to where Jeff lived. And he'd just met Caroline, I think, the previous year, and I think he was looking at getting an apartment with her. I mean, it was that serious, that quick, which, I said he'd had relationships before. It was quite fast, and so very quickly, it was obvious that this was very serious. I guess he'd been working for Reuters for at least a year, maybe longer, and he was looking to, I guess, put his roots down. I mean, it was very clear he absolutely loved New York.
Well, I'm fanatical about keeping all these documents, so I just had a quick look through to see what we could dig up. I met Matt originally back in 97, 98. We were both working on the same project. Matt was working for one of the suppliers. Matt's brother, Jeff, was working for Reuters. We had an idea that we would need a North American, New York-based office, and Jeff was interested in leaving Reuters and helping us set that up.
In the weeks and the months prior, we'd obviously been talking with him, and Henry in particular, just sorting out the structure of the proposed company over in the States.
But he'd actually come to England at the end of August, the August bank holiday time.
Did his usual thing, rushing around the country, seeing family, friends.
Well, we worked in a very small niche industry of specialists, and there was a whole ecosystem of industry press and industry conferences. And there was one coming up on September the 11th that was going to be at the World Trade Center. So it ended up being that Nick and Jeff would go to the conference, and I ended up staying in London. Meanwhile, Matt was on holiday in Lanzarote.
I'm on the beach, obviously, with my mum and my wife and 2 kids. They were probably 6 months, 18 months at the time. So you're doing stuff like you do, playing, in the sand, building sandcastles, and just, enjoying that time.
around lunchtime or just after, I'd been exchanging emails with Jeff about, who he needs to meet at the conference and stuff like that. And I recall getting an email from him where he literally said, "Okay, Henry, I gotta go. I'm gonna be late for the conference." That may have been the last email he ever sent.
So I was at work and just on the computer on the internet, and then we started hearing about what was going on at the World Trade Center.
Phoebe, who was only 6 months old, was just struggling to settle. All my kids have loved just being pushed around in pushchairs and buggies. Gets them to sleep most of the time, so you do what any parent did, and Mel took her off the beach this time and was just basically walking up and down, please sleep.
My understanding is that she saw the televisions there, which suddenly would show the towers and what was going on. One had been hit. I think she may have come back and called Matthew. Matthew went up and I was on the beach, and then eventually Matthew said basically what had happened.
Immediately, I wasn't that concerned. I mean, I knew Jeff worked for Reuters up in Times Square. You're well away from the World Trade.
Not long after, I was basically, I think, someone in the office told me, I think it was Henry, or told me that basically Jeff might have attended the meeting.
I remember calling Henry from this public payphone.
There I am, seeing what's happening on TV. I've got seen this email from Jeff saying, "Henry, I gotta go, I'm gonna be late for the conference," which was at the right time for him to have got the subway downtown from his apartment and get to the conference. I didn't know what to say to Matt. I just mumbled something. I'm not sure what I said, but I didn't tell him that, "Hey, I know your brother's in the building." I couldn't. I mean, what would you say?
Got through to Rob, and I remember him almost blurting out, "Jeff's in the tower," and I remember just dropping the phone. He'd spoken to Caroline, and it became very clear that Jeff had headed down to the conference and was at the top of the North Tower, which obviously by this time had collapsed.
2 came down, and 1 just came down now, on firefighters and cops. Really bad, you're gonna have thousands dead.
I remember Mum just a gasp. I mean, she knew. I mean, she's always said that she felt
he died. I just had that feeling that he was no more.
So that was the day where that American guy was dissolving into tears in our office, and my diary entry simply says, at the end of the day, WTC tragedy. How straight-laced is that? Later in the day, it started becoming clear a few people who were due to be going to the conference were okay and found and known to be okay, but an awful lot of people were simply not being heard from. And Nick responds saying, "Nothing we can do, I'm afraid. People here can't even find out if husbands and wives are okay."
I had no idea. I mean, obviously, it's going on.
You
But
haven't seen
I had
those
no
ones
idea
at all.
This.
You saw the Jeff email, right?
Yeah.
But
I was copied on that, but I didn't see until a couple of days later. And I remember I used to mock you for keeping your diary, Henry. Your sort of hourly, blow-by-blow account of working.
I don't remember exactly how long, but Matt continued to work for the company for a while. But the pressure and stress and a number of other factors meant that he just took leave of absence. That got formalised sometime later as, okay, Matt's left, he's not coming back to the company. I kept in touch with Matt, and we would talk about stuff and share views about things. And I think he started looking into what had happened with a bit more interest, weeding through all of the mad, crazy theories put around on the internet.
You get taught in the movies and stuff that there's been a crime, it's going to be investigated, you're going to go to court, and you're going to get truth and justice, potentially someone held accountable for it. We've never had that with 9/11. There has been no examination of the events of that day in court. We have the 9/11 Commission report as an investigation, but nothing to that legal standard that we all know, whether you trust it or not. It's what normally happens. So
Matt is a very interesting man. It's going to haunt him if he hasn't moved on. I can't see that he's ever going to let this go.
Hey,
Matt, hi, how are you doing?
Ian, how you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah. So what's new since we saw each other last?
Apart from my hair.
Your hair, yeah. I wasn't going to say anything about that, Matt.
Well, you haven't got any, so. I see you're wearing a rather,
9/11. Well, it's the
rather
20th
cool t-shirt.
anniversary coming up, isn't it? So,
yeah.
I did maths at university. At university, I did slightly unusual. I did maths and then I did applied social studies, masters. You know, it was sort of ideal, really, to make somebody suspicious about 9/11, because the maths told me that there was something terribly wrong with the energy equation, what we'd call the energy equation of the towers. I also had my social science background, so I knew how easy it is to brainwash people, basically. So people wrote in after our ad in The Guardian saying, oh, you know, we don't agree with this. And I wrote a letter back, and normally you wouldn't expect they'd just bin it. They'd think, well, we've got his money, we'll bin it. But actually, they ran it. Journalism, you know, if you're anti-establishment or suspicious of the establishment, journalism is very, very hard to make a living. And I figured out that freshly roasted coffee should work well. We started off with just a homemade coffee roasting machine on the street corner, and then, you know, it's got bigger, and I'm approaching retirement, actually. So if you know anybody out there who wants to buy a coffee shop in Notting Hill, you know.
So this is the full size?
That was a full page of the Independent. It's bigger. It would have been bigger.
I was going to say, yeah, because was it a tabloid then, or was it still a broadsheet?
In those days, it was still a broadsheet.
Yeah. But when we met,
when we first met, I remember it clearly, Matt.
I've got a hazy memory because I thought it was that very first reinvestigate 9/11 meeting in about May 2013 or April 2013.
I mean, one of the most important things that happened to the 9/11 Truth Movement was that Matt Campbell turned up.
Go back a bit. In 2004, because we as a family had brought back repatriated remains through English law, you have to have an inquest. And I just started to think, a little, you know, light bulb moment. If I repatriated Jeff's remains, would that force a new inquest?
That's exactly what politicians have been saying to us. Can you find a victim? And then you showed up, you know, and I thought, this is fantastic. You know, we finally cracked it.
Ian had some contacts. We ended up arranging a meeting with Michael Meacher. He was a Labour MP, not my MP, but he'd been a long-term sceptic, very cynical about, you know, what the US government had been up to and other issues with the narrative.
And when we had a private meeting with him, he basically said, this destroys my reputation when I do this.
Very supportive. I mean, he basically said, whatever I need to do to help you get your brother's inquest reopened, you know, get in contact. And he basically, you know, said, use the remains. You know, it's a big part. No, so we had a death certificate issued towards the end of October. And then around December, I remember both the press but also the police liaison officers telling us that we were very, very unlikely to get any remains of Jeff because his bodies had been vaporised, which, you know, in hindsight, it's a really strange term to use. It was actually from the chief medical examiner.
There's literally no trace. A significant number of people. It's utterly, utterly horrifying.
Obviously, you know, plenty of bodies had been found, but I think due to the degree of fragmentation and all the rest of it, and obviously what they knew they had, I think it was a day before Mum's birthday in June, and I think she got a call from, you know, our police liaison officer. Some of his remains had been identified, and the piece in question was a piece of Jeff's collarbone.
And I thought, Jeff is having a laugh on us. When he was 6 months, we went on motor rail. It's a long story, but it jerked and he was thrown on the ground. At 6 months old, he had a green fracture. Oh, don't forget my broken collarbone when I was 6 months. So,
but you know, it went from an undertaker in the States. It then got delivered to an undertaker in the UK, and then it was released to us. It was in a little casket. I didn't know what to do with it, and so for quite a few years, it just sat outside my office on the top floor of my house. In 2004, Mum got another call from the police, and this time 3 of his remains had been identified. They were small bone fragments. I remember one was from his thigh bone, but they were small. And so we had 4.
Another lot came over, and that actually was his scalp.
Bit of his scalp, bit of his face, bit of his jaw, his ear, just, recognisable,
It wasn't burnt, because my fear was that, to be in the flames. We were told by the police liaison that there was good chance that he could just be vaporised, or whatever the term is, when there's just ash.
At the World Trade Center, sir, on the 106th floor, there's no injuries, but the people on track, they don't have to fear. We got it.
Okay, so, the very first inquest was here at the West London Coroner's Court.
And anyway, out of the 67 British victims, 10 had actually been identified. They basically created 10 different inquests, but it's like a joint inquest or inquiry that they held.
Only 2 of the 10 victims were represented by family members.
At the time, I didn't know that all of the 10 inquests were done in an hour and 45.
I've listened to the audio, I've got the actual transcript, official transcript.
And they spent probably no more than about 3 or 4 minutes talking about my brother's life and what was found.
And it seemed incredibly short that, that's his moment of an inquiry and justice into the events surrounding his death.
After the inquest, a couple of weeks later, I think Mum just got a formal letter, which is, it's basically the conclusion that the coroner drew. The impact into the North Tower of American Airlines 11 caused the subsequent collapse of the building, and that's how my brother died.
The inquests were held at a time when all the families would still have been in a stunned disbelief, inability to accept all the different psychological states that you're in. So it's like, get this done, sweep it in under the carpet, close that chapter, move on.
8 years ago, my brother had an inquest here, and didn't attend. And it's kind of weird standing outside the building now that possibly, hopefully, within 2 years, I'm actually going to be inside that building attending his reopened inquest.
So if all things were considered, it's not political, it's not anything else, it's just purely looking at the evidence and the new evidence and the lack of inquiry into that evidence.
So much new information has come to light since the inquest, notwithstanding Jeff's own remains, which weren't available, and witness testimony about what happened on 9/11.
Yes, I would like that to be submitted and the Attorney General to make a decision on that. And I think really with all the information that we have, I think it should go through.
We've got way over what's required to basically get the authority granted by the Attorney General.
I'm sure Matt might have more faith in British justice, but I'm afraid I'm pretty cynical.
But if you don't try, you don't succeed.
So I'd say an awful lot is down to the luck of the draw as to whether Matt goes before an individual who cares about the facts. There's absolutely no reason in law why Matt shouldn't win.
My name is Drew DePalma, and I'm the director of operations for an engineering firm in New Jersey. My mom, Jean Caviasco DePalma, was killed in 9/11, and she was in the World Trade Center Tower 1. I write this letter to support the application of the Campbell family and briefly to explain why I believe that further investigation into the cause of the collapse of World Trade Center 1 is not only worthwhile, but necessary, because the ruling that the towers collapsed due to fire makes them the first and only skyscrapers in the world to do so by that cause. The first and only of anything deserves extreme scrutiny, especially given the cloud of doubt surrounding all the events that transpired before, during, and after that 9/11 day. We're at the 9/11 Memorial. This is the town I live in. I didn't live here when my mom passed, but it's a nice remembrance, and I'm glad my town has this for all the people that were affected in this town. I've been part of the town's Parks Committee for about a year now. and we actually just ran a fundraiser to help raise some funds to upgrade the playground equipment. There's a balance beam there now that kind of stretches the playground. You see benches all around the park, pretty much everywhere, and that's what most people donate. But I think we have enough benches. I want some, kids can enjoy.
So Drew doesn't really talk about his mother as much as I'd hope. We met in 2004, and he told me a little bit about everything, but we only really talk about it on the anniversary. But this is something that he has been involved in the last 2 or 3 years, and I feel like this is closure and almost a catharsis for him.
I started going down the rabbit hole, doing a bunch of research. I was fine. I got a little angry for a little bit of time, but now I'm pretty much at peace with everything.
Drew is, as you know, lost his mother before he was fully grown. He's an example of someone who's been able to weather the loss at a very inconvenient time that was too soon, and somehow managed to make himself an adult and a father and a husband.
This picture was taken in Miami, Florida. It was Jean's 40th birthday weekend. It was a lot of fun. It was something that we always planned to do when Jean turned 40, and we actually did it. So my husband calligraphied this for me. It is actually something that Jean sent an email. She didn't write it, but it was an email that she found, called From Me to You, to several people minutes before the towers were struck. She was trying to get her life together, and this was maybe something that she was reading periodically to help her, reevaluate her life. And
divorce was a pretty rough time for my mom. It hit her really hard, just emotionally and physically. But I felt at that point in 9/11, she was actually in good physical health. She started working out more. I guess when you have big life changes, you go one way or the other. She was exercising more. She loved biking. So she was bicycle riding. She was losing weight. She was definitely happier for sure. So that's kind of a bright side that, I always hope when I go, it's at, a peak of, happiness as opposed to the latter. We got chickens in this past year. They provide us with breakfast every morning. The kids love handling them. Some chickens are more social than others. Probably no. So I couldn't be happier here. They definitely have different personalities, though. Chickens aren't as dumb as you would think. They actually understand. Maybe up to like 20 words or something I read. I don't know if that's true or not, but I like animals, so.
so Jean's name is right here.
She works in the city. She's usually out of the house before I even woke up because I drove myself to school at that point. And then she didn't get home usually till late. And when she came home, I was out with my friends. And then maybe we saw each other for dinner. And then I'd be out till whenever. She was probably asleep by the time I got home. Being a kid, you want to be out doing stuff. And like I said, she was commuting to the city every day.
I had not seen this memorial before, and I was surprised how immense it is. And exactly from what I read, points right to where the towers stood.
We got plane crash into World Trade Center. You aware of that? A crash into the World Trade Center in Manhattan? World Trade Center in Manhattan.
Just another normal work day. Dropped Marissa off at my parents' house and got to work. I don't remember the exact time, but my principal came knocking on my door and took me into the hallway and said that my mother had called and wanted me to go to her house.
So I was walking through the halls, and there's just a lot of commotion going on. I had no idea what was happening. And then they called a meeting for the whole school into the gym, and they kind of explained what happened.
The principal explained that planes flew into the buildings that Jean worked in.
2 World Trade Center, we visit people in the building, they need medical attention.
Second alarm now being transmitted to number 2 World Trade Center, reporting an extension.
My mom works there, so it's just like everyone else that day. If anyone knew anyone that worked there or around there, they were on the phone.
And so I kind of went into numb mode, I call it. You know, I just like didn't have any feelings. And she asked if someone should drive me home. And I said, no, I'll go. And I drove home just totally focused. And when I got there, you know, you just keep seeing those same pictures of it's all we had at the time was those pictures of the planes flying into those buildings.
And we went home, and I wasn't a smoker back then, but that day I sure as heck had a cigarette.
I called their high school, and they had already left. I have not been up there. I've only been to the memorial inside, and I've been to the waterfalls, but I have not been up into the tower. You know, because after 20 years, you come to a place in your mind where you're, you know, not necessarily at peace, but you've kind of, me personally, I've kind of put it in its little pocket, you know? And then every once in a while, something happens, or you know, someone says something and it kind of brings you back to a little bit of that place where you don't always want to be. The next day, though, my two brothers and my sister went into the city. I stayed home with my parents and Marissa, and they took pictures of Jean, and, you know, people were just trying to find people that could find their loved one.
Nothing was ever found of my mother, so I had nothing to go on as far as physical evidence for her personally. And I was probably the most optimistic person in my family. I was like, she's going to come out of it. You know, we'll find her. Eventually, even like weeks after that, and even years after, I was like, who knows? Maybe she was at a coma or she wandered off somewhere. I think with a weekend, my uncle, who's her brother, pretty much, he analyzed where she worked, where her office was.
She was on the 100th floor, and there was no way that she could have.
He just didn't want me to like hold up false hope. He pretty much gave it to me straight. It's like, the chances of her making out were pretty slim. So that was pretty disappointing to say the least. He could have let me hold on to some hope. But no, I always like people to give it to me straight. Like to do that for other people, so I expect the same in return.
I mean, I have to say, when I'm with my niece and nephew, Drew and Jamie, Jean's kids, it's a comfort. She's there. I mean, she's everywhere, but she's there with those kids. I went to the 10-year, memorial when it was 10 years ago. Didn't really do anything for me as far as helping me grieve, because I've already, done that. So I don't need to go to any physical space to look at that horror again and again and again. I kind of just deal with in my own way, by myself or with my family or whatever it happens to be. But yeah, I'm not interested in doing those things. The 10th anniversary was enough. It's just amazing to me that, and I know that's the whole crux of this whole thing. Like, how does that just, how do those buildings perfectly fall,
So yeah, it just strikes me as odd that 3 buildings within, a couple hours of each other all fell down. So it seems like something else was going on.
And Drew is a man on a mission right now. He wants all the answers.
There's a lot of stuff that, didn't get analyzed correctly, in my opinion. I mean, if they had done your job, I probably wouldn't be here now, shooting this documentary and trying to help get a new investigation.
I think we owe, as a country, we owe it to the poor people that have passed away and their families and the world to find out what really happened here, because it's not just a, planes hit, book closed kind of thing.
From the time I was a little kid, I was building things. I was always trying to build something. My mother used to say, if it can be taken apart, Bill will take it to part, because that's what he does. He wants to know how things work. He pulls things, and I pulled a lot of things apart. My name is Bill Bernier, and I am an architect. I've been an architect since 1984, but I've done architecture all my life. You know, I grew up right around here, and here in this house, and I must have built 20 forts in the woods. And the last one I built, I think I was 15 years old. It was framed properly. It was completely wired for electricity. I used barbed wire to run electricity from the house up to my tree house, which was 100 yards up in the woods. I applied to Pratt. I got in. That January, I moved down to New York. I went to Pratt. And it was interesting because when I got there, the World Trade Center was under construction. And from my dorm out in Brooklyn, you could see the two towers coming up. The World Trade Center buildings, each building was compared, somebody from the New York Times, I think, said, the World Trade Center looks like the box that the Empire State Building came in. But it was fascinating. They were always lit up, even at night, and there was cranes on top, and there was such activity. So it was fun, we got to watch that go up. Little did we know what was waiting for us in the future.
What's striking about Bill is that even though he lost his best friend and went through some tough times, he was fortunate enough to be able to pull out of it. Not everybody does.
I met Frank. I met Frank DeMartini at Pratt. He was one of the first guys I met. For some reason, I just fell in with him, and the two of us really, really hit it off. We were popular in the community. Lots of people knew us, and work just came out of the sky. We had lived through the bombing of 1993, which was actually Frank's entry into the whole realm of the World Trade Center. Frank kind of walked me through what that damage was and how robust the structure of the building was. There were redundancies beyond belief. He was a big fan of the History Channel, and he said, why hasn't there been a history of the World Trade Center on the History Channel? That should be, there's got to be something. So he, I can't remember the woman's name, but he contacted this woman, and they worked and worked and worked, and they finally produced it.
The building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners because this structure is like the mosquito netting on your screen door, and the jet plane is just a pencil puncturing that screen netting.
Wow. Good to hear his voice. When he made that statement, he was working for Leslie E. Robinson, one of the designers, one of the structural engineers who designed that structure. He had, believe me, Frank was as bad as me when it came to understanding how things work. So I know he had many conversations with Leslie about how the building went together, how it was designed, to withstand all manner of loads, of dynamic loads. That's what they call a plane hitting the building or a wind hitting the building.
My kids were asking me about 9/11, and it's really hard to talk about it and explain it. And I was curious to what they pick up on, and is it a scary thing?
I can't believe it's almost 20 years.
I can't either.
It seems like yesterday. I was not in a good place in my life. I had spent some time with Frank, and that was the good part. I had lost my job, and my marriage was not in a good place. I was down and out. There was some excitement in my life because and I was nervous because Frank and I were about to go into business together. And it was funny because Frank, for the longest time, had tried to get me to help him get out of the World Trade Center. My day-to-day life was going down to this high-rise in Long Branch, New Jersey, and working on an apartment. And Frank was going to work at the Trade Center. I was an early riser, and I got up at 6 o'clock. It was about an hour and a half, hour and 45-minute drive. And as I came around the corner off of Route 80 and onto I-95, that's where the World Trade Center comes into view. And the North Tower looked like a chimney. So I dialed up Frank, and it went to voicemail. And I dialed him again, and it went to voicemail. I couldn't get him.
We were supposed to have dinner with Frank.
I remember.
The three of us.
Yeah.
we're supposed to have dinner.
Our father-daughter dinner was going to be our father-daughter-uncle dinner. I panicked. I just continued south and went to Long Branch. Went to the job. When they told me that the South Tower had collapsed, I was shocked. I was like, that's impossible.
Yeah. Get ready for the big one. The tower just collapsed.
The whole thing collapsed?
Yeah, it's collapsed.
What do you mean the whole thing just collapsed?
Collapsed. I'm watching it live.
I didn't know what to think of it. I really didn't. We all everybody went into shock. It was just the most bizarre. I mean, it was like an out-of-body experience. And I was just consumed with worry about Frank, and I didn't even think about Nicole.
Hello, you've reached Nicole DiMartini. Please leave a message.
Hi, Nicole. It's Bill. Hey, listen, I'm up in Fort Greene Park trying to find Frank's bench and his trees. And there's a bench nearby, but it's dedicated to people who passed away from COVID-19. Thanks, Nicole. And he used to live right up this street at 11A, South Elliott Place. But we planted trees just like these. They were just like these, because there was nothing left of the people that perished, I think Bobby McIlvaine, at least they got his body. He was one of the very few. Most people just disappeared. From the Prison Ship Martyrs Monument, when you stand at the base of the monument, you can look out. There she is. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We didn't put in a bench. They didn't allow us. They were very strict. They were like, we can't put in a bench.
Do you remember exactly when that was that we did that planting for Frank's memorial?
Yeah, maybe 2003.
That's what I'm thinking, the spring of '03.
Big pine trees that are right next to the tennis court.
Across the walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see them now.
Yeah.
And they've planted some new smaller ones now that have fences around them.
Exactly, yes. So there are a few more that were planted later, right after that, and they didn't really take good care of them.
Yeah. This is for Frank too. Wow.
Yeah, the crab apples were for Frank too, but
it's got some fruit on it.
say hi to Shelley.
I will. Well, we're here, and this is it. This crab apple is hers. That pine is his. And that spruce was one of them. I mean, it's not everybody that can say they got trees planted in one of New York City's most famous parks in their honor. The guy that Nina was trying to convince at the Parks Department was very strict. He said, Frederick Law Olmsted never designed the park to have benches all over the place. And that doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, it was the excuse that was given. It's almost like the excuses that were given to us as to what happened to those towers. Just excuses. I didn't really start to think about the mechanics. Here I am, the guy that likes to know how things work. I didn't really start to think about that for 5 years. Straight ahead. I'll never set foot in that Freedom Tower. That's not my cup of tea. I call it the blood building. A lot of people died to put that there. Unnecessarily. But I took my books, I took my toys, I took my tools, I took my grandfather clock, and I took my car, and I left. I came up here. I put everything in storage, and I moved into this little cottage here, and didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And this is where, in this cottage, is where I found architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. And I look at it as this is what I do for Frank. This is what not just for me. I mean, it's a lot for me. And Frank is gone, and nothing's going to bring him back. He's history. When those explosives tore that building apart, it tore the people apart too. So the saving grace is that Frank didn't feel a thing. He just disappeared.
Because so many people didn't get bodies. Nothing. And we actually got not a full body, but we got a body to take home and bury. And we're so grateful for that. Hundreds of parts they would get from the body, and they just said, I don't want it anymore. We can't take this anymore. They would get, every week they get a call. We found, an elbow, we found a thumb or something. And we have a relatively sound body that we got to take home. And that, we went home and buried him a week. So it was Tuesday a week after 9/11 we buried him. Or it might have been sometime that week. Our dogs are already out there, so I go to Bobby, put the flowers in there. And that's, I've been doing that for 20 years now. Oh, good, at least they just cut the place.
They what? Yeah, I can tell, really.
You just move it.
Hey, Bobby.
Like that, they cleaned it up for us around the edges.
Yeah, usually they leave the grass there. He'd love the yellow and purple flowers.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go up and clean the bench. All right.
I'm just going to sit.
Not one cleaning, you're not sitting.
Yes, I'm going to sit and just think about Bobby. Clean away.
Just get this stuff out.
Where are those stones from?
Well, it's the same, mostly from, Ground Zero and Japan, but I've added stones.
I know this didn't come from Japan. We would have never been able to carry it.
We did 2 stone walks. I think we did maybe 3 stone walks. One in Korea, Nagasaki to Hiroshima. We pushed a 2,000-pound stone. And on the way, we're talking about anti-war. That 9/11, we think war is the wrong decision. The Buddhist monks, pushed with us. Now we're talking days at a time. I mean, talk about how friendly you can get after days. I mean, if I was a religious person, I would become a monk tomorrow. All right.
Now, can we sit for a minute?
Yeah, you can sit.
You're going to stand?
No. Okay, we did it, Babalu.
It looks beautiful. Look at the flowers.
So
it's like yesterday or 1,000 miles back, 1,000 years back.
Seems like 1,000 years.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like yesterday afternoon.
What is not considered often is the other victims of 9/11, like the 30,000 soldiers that were involved in the war since 9/11 who have killed themselves, the 7,000 that have died, and all the people that are handicapped and disabled, as well as all the first responders that are getting sick and dying.
That's America's world.
Well, there's the answer.
So America's got to change. America's got to grow up. The people of America have got to grow up. They've got to get out of this "they would never" mentality. If they would never, then they would never lie about the environmental impact of 9/11, causing upwards of 70,000 9/11 first responders to become sick and dying. This government is more than capable of anything. Anything.
That's why I've gone into history. History is so important to me because we've been doing this bullshit forever.
And we're saying that we're leaving Afghanistan, but how many mercenaries, how many thousands are we still leaving there? It's disgusting.
I mean, we've been dealing with these people. We've dealt with bin Laden for 20 years. Then suddenly he becomes, in 98, becomes the boogeyman, the bad guy. The people that were in Iran-Contra, Lee Hamilton, in 92, 93 had hearings on it, and he dismissed everything. He got it off the books. And guess what? Who's leading the 9/11 Commission? Lee Hamilton. So if you put all these together, it's bad news. It really is bad news, and it's a horrible, horrible cover-up.
That was presented to the world as the definitive account of 9/11. First of all, they only answered 30% of the family's well-researched questions.
There's so many things.
Of course.
By choice, by design. And that keeps us discussing back and forth.
Exactly. Which is why I can't say definitively that I know what happened on 9/11. I couldn't tell you one way or the other what happened to those buildings. That is where the majority of the people were murdered that day. There are family members that still question how those buildings came down, and as long as it's an important question to them, it will always be an important question to me.
I want to find, and I spent so much time talking about how he died. And the thing is, I'm sick of getting emotional. Okay, I really am. And I really want to talk about who the hell killed Bobby. We had nothing for Jack?
Yeah, well, I guess I could grab a Gerber Daisy out of there. But okay, let's go.
All right?
Yeah.
All right? All right, Babalu. Love you. See you next week. We went to a psychologist immediately. He said, but look at it this way. Just put a silver dollar or a $50 in front of your eye like this. okay? And he says, that's right there. It's in your face and it's going to stay in your face. But eventually it just starts moving away. And as that moves away, then you just can see over here, you can see over here, but it's still there. But eventually it moves further out. Then you can see this way, you can see this way, but it's still there. And eventually it keeps moving out, and it's the truth. We can laugh now, we have fun things, but it's always there.
How to respond to West Street, because we got some very badly burned victims in building 1 in the lobby.
West Street?
Yeah, West Street side.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Hopefully we just sort of drop out, because I don't want to sit and argue with people. I just think it speaks for itself. Obviously he's dead, right? So, I have this. And then, so a doctor confirming and not confirming it, it doesn't mean anything to me. A medical professional, I might say you're a medical professional, I come up to you and say, this is 9/11. They'd probably be scared to death to say one thing or another.
Cyril H. Wecht. I am a forensic pathologist and a medical legal consultant. I was the coroner of Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, and 129 surrounding municipalities for 20 years, 2 separate 10-year periods. Since 1957, I would estimate I have performed about 21,000 autopsies. I have reviewed, signed off, or supervised on about 41,000 other autopsies. When I was asked to review the Warren Commission report, it was in August of that year that I pointed out that the president's brain was missing. Others knew about it, but no one had said a word. And so anyway, these are the things that I do, all of these consultations and these autopsies, and then occasionally, the major national controversial case. Black belt, blue box, abrasions. Much of the face is marked here as missing. They could block everything except the lower face is blocked off. Unfortunately, they don't describe the remaining portion of the skull to permit me to determine whether it looked like that which is missing had blown off as opposed to having been crushed. Most of head, yeah, I'm right, absent most of head. So what is it that the father wants to know? Okay, and the body was found when?
He was found shortly after the North Tower was struck.
And he was in front of, near the lobby, entering the lobby.
So he was found.
Well, then it had to be from some kind of an explosive effect.
Normally the way it works is if you have a family member that's murdered, you call the police and the police do an investigation. And you trust the authorities to be thorough, to care, and to want to get to the truth. And you don't have to go petition. It's not the proper role a citizen should have to take as to force the government to do an investigation, but apparently that is what's required.
All right, another day.
Here, come. We're at Point Mountain Reserve, and every 9/11 I go for a hike to remember my mom. It's better for me, instead of going to a church or memorial. I just like to be by myself, with the ones I love, and that's how I deal with things. I've been to the site a number of times. I've never been to the museum. My sister invited me. I really have no want or need to go there. I find it probably mostly depressing. She confirmed my suspicions. She said it was great to do once, but probably would never do it again. 20 years is really just a number. I know for most people who don't deal with it every day, 20 years is a big deal, but it's the same thing year in, year out for me. Having kids and not having my mom here has been pretty tough. I just really wish my kids had a chance to meet her. And there's not many people I feel that are willing to do what I'm doing right now, just to kind of say keep the victims' memories alive, as well as hopefully get down to the bottom of things. I think we need a more sense of community in this country, and I think 9/11 did that for a little bit and then tapered off. So as long as people start to think for themselves and just hold the ones dear to them close, and just have fun. Don't take themselves so seriously. I think the world will be a better place.
We're going to get some flowers in London, aren't we?
I've got them here.
Have you got them with you?
Everything ready, yes.
In that little bag?
Yes. It's going to bring it in.
You know, so here's a random thought.
Yes.
We call it 9/11.
Yeah.
But you know that's weird.
I know. And in fact...
But would you ever call it 11/9? It just...
No.
Does it have a significance, 20 years? I mean, it's just one of those things, it's like...
Well,
so different to any anniversary, it's kind of...
Oh,
you know,
yes, but of course.
no, for anything. It could be wedding anniversary, it could be, it's a strange thing to give. Why does the 19th anniversary have less importance than the 20th?
It's time now.
It's
We will be
nothing.
arriving into our next station, Gatwick Airport.
Where's the queue? There is no queue.
No, but I'm just saying...
It's not a grave or
No, but I
anything.
want to say that after coming for like 15 years, I stopped coming because...
Why did you stop coming?
Well, I stopped going after, I suppose, about 15 years because I felt it difficult because so many people have not had their loved ones identified, and we've had a number of things come over.
I remember the flurry of emails and letters that were going around when this was being proposed and designed.
Every year, from September 11th, for the first 15 years, I used to come. Hannah would arrange in advance whether you wanted to read out a family member, but you sometimes had to read a couple of other people, depending on how many came.
Is this
And that's really lovely.
Can you read that, Mum?
Time is too slow for those who wait. I'd like to lay our roses here, if we could, yes? Okay.
Put one down from Rob, and then I'll do Dad's and ours, yeah? Yeah.
I can't quite reach it, can you, Matthew?
Oh, here.
Always I'll be in your heart. Don't forget my soul is near you, and so we'll never be apart. And this is from your friends at Rhys Waters, which is rather poignant. That's where he was on that fateful day. Keep that on my sideboard, next to Jeff's picture. Where is it there's supposed to be a remnant of... is it the metal? It's the metal, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's part of the metal.
So the memorial stone is carved by hand and includes an extract from the American poet Henry Van Dyke. Underneath it, preserved in resin, lies a section of the steel girder salvaged from the World
yes,
Trade
I knew
Center.
it was. I thought, and it would be in that top part there.
Should pick it up, test it for explosive residues. All right, Mum, should we head out?
I think so.
Yeah?
I'll go get my bag. And
Oh,
then we'll
I
go.
think it's gone walkabout.
With me, I mean, obviously I grieve by Jeff, but I thought, well, Jeff wouldn't want me to see me in the corner crying all the time. Yes, I just thought, well, I want Jeff to see that I am going on with life, and I am continue to be the happy person I always was, and am, so that's what helped me through. I know Matthew and Robert had a lot of struggles, but that's the way that it is, because we're all individuals and we deal with things differently.
When it takes decades to get some semblance of justice, it's always through the never-ending fights that it just seems so wrong that family members have to pursue in order to get some sort of justice. One of the things that I've always personally found to be quite striking is the degree of fragmentation of the remains.
The title of this report is Human Identification Following the World Trade Center Disaster, Assessing Management Practices for Highly Fragmented and Co-mingled Human Remains.
So out of the 2,600 odd who died at the World Trade Center, there's 22,000 fragments.
Medical examiner personnel were initially caught off guard by the degree of destruction and fragmentation of the recovered human remains.
5,000 of those 22,000 fragments are smaller than an inch. It's 1,100 and something people have not been identified. That's huge. You can't even fathom. Jeff's remains no more than 2-3% of his body. It's actually the last remain identified in May 2013. This fragment that's still in New York was actually given a location. It's just south of the North Tower. It's between 18 and 41 meters away from the South Tower. Okay, it's not the kind of 200 or 300 meters distance that some remains we found. There's a horrendous map that I think the fire brigade prepared, and they tag whether it's a civilian, firefighter, etc. But there is one that just tags human remains, and it's awful. You've got the 2 footprints of the towers, and there's just this huge spread of remains that were once people. Okay, we know the steel beams were propelled out with huge forces, but the actual physical stuff that I care about, people and my brother, were ejected outside of the footprints, and it's so unpleasant thinking about it. But I've since read a lot that has been published about the search to try and identify people. Is this concept of commingling?
The explosive force that blew over fire trucks and peeled stone facades from buildings also disintegrated human bodies, turning bones into flying shrapnel, the tidal wave of debris that carried human remains blocks away, depositing them, in some cases, on top of buildings, also fused soft tissue into bone fragments.
And that basically means the impact of the force of the explosion, not just the pancake collapse, whatever, has actually mingled remains into my brother. And so the only explanation she could give me was they couldn't get a clear single DNA match in those remains. So I just got this horrible vision of other people's remains being removed from my brother's face. It was just,
That's not going to happen from crushing. A building collapses and 2 or more people are crushed. I can't envision a situation in which the soft tissue of one victim is hurled with such force as to become embedded into, attached to a bony fragment of another victim. I can't envision that.
And one of the things I always pondered about is, okay, there's all this massive degree of fragmentation. Some people, nothing found at all. But you also had fairly large parts of people being found. I mean, there was one guy at the inquest, same floor as my brother, 86% of his body was found. I'm not going to say who it was, but, he was one of the 2 family members that actually bothered attending. I mean, there you go. But he's just there going, I don't understand why, because everyone kept being read out, small fragment, small this, 2%, and he's sitting there going, how? And for me, the unpleasant conclusion I've drawn is its proximity to explosives. So if you were very close to the explosives, there's not a lot left of you. That's something I've always, thought about, although it's quite a dark topic to kind of touch on, or thought to have, even.
This is a strange situation. I hope that the architects and engineers and others who have studied this horrible tragedy and who have expressed their opinions will be given the opportunity to testify in public. I hope that happens, and I'm amazed that it has not yet happened.
I've been holding a vision in my head of standing outside this building after successfully getting the authority from the Attorney General. It's not the coroner's court, but it's that important step after the Attorney General.
Exciting is the wrong word, but it's like, we're actually at this point right now where I know that, myself and, Mum and hopefully Dad and Rob will be going up to London and actually submitting this to the Attorney General.
Do you want to wear your hat now, Mav?
No.
You do.
Are you going to wear a hat?
Only for the photo.
Here we go. You all right?
Do you want me to sit in or you sit on the edge?
Yeah, let's assume that the Attorney General grants his authority. An order will go to the High Court to quash the original inquest and to open a new one. The High Court typically sides with what the Attorney General has decided. Right. So, we're hopeful that once the Attorney General says yes, grants his authority, it should be a formality for the case to be pushed to the West London Coroner's Court. The question then would be, after the court case, how I feel then. And, it's been hard work over a year to get everything together to actually come to this day. A couple of weeks before the 20th anniversary is it's a massive achievement.
I went to the Reinvestigate 9/11 meeting that was being held in London, and it was the first time I was actually interacting and actually, seeing people who, were like me, didn't believe the official narrative of what we've been told. So yeah, I mean, because in the early days it was really just me.
Of course,
I mean, I
yes.
started going slightly insane in the early years, you know. Anyway, I was still dealing with depression, and you know, I basically had a huge eureka. I just felt I was able to actually go public properly and, you know, I guess talk about stuff. And I was kind of inspired by the speakers that were reinvestigating 9/11. I thought, well, I can surely do something because I'm a family member and, you know, I lost someone. You know, I think that all of us together as applicants, you know, it helps the case, I guess, to a certain extent. Hi, we want to go to 54 Doughty Street. Doughty Street. An EVDV, that's Henry.
The place is like a ghost town, and it goes all the way back. They have a lot of space, so if you want to get a meeting room there, I'm sure.
We're waiting for Ian Henschel to turn up.
You know, you can't predict the future, but this could be the moment that changed everything. You know, I'm not 100% optimistic about that, but it could be. If you don't even try, then you've lost to start with. So, and how much Matt's tried. I mean, this is just like Matt's day today.
Well, today's the culmination of a lot of hard work by a lot of people. Where it goes beyond here, who's to say? We'll find out, I guess, in probably a few months.
In this box, we have just shy of 3,000 pages. This is a cover letter to the Attorney General. Eyewitness statements from first responders who were there when, you know, the three towers collapsed. You know, these first responders who are willing to support our application, but also in court, prepared to be cross-examined as witnesses. Yeah, I'm hopeful that we can actually change the verdict of what caused my brother's death, that it was explosives that ultimately killed him. If the senior coroner at the West London Coroner's Court looks at our application, decides it has enough merit to reopen my brother's inquest, he can sign that consent order, and it will speed things up tremendously. And, you know, we could be talking months instead of years to actually get this stuff into court. When I looked at Jeff's remains, you know, for me, I wasn't really looking at my brother. I mean, for me, the physical form, the 3D form of Jeff has gone. That doesn't mean he's not, you know, in the stardust and around us all the time, you know.
Yes, well, this is one of my favourite photos of Jeff. If you can see here that he's got his blue spotty tie, and after Jeff had died, we went back to the flat, and I asked Caroline, I'd love to take something back of Jeff's, and I asked if I could have his spotty tie, but he called it his lucky tie. I like to think of happy thoughts of Jeff. I know there's a lot of sadness and that, but yes, I like to go forward thinking it could make a difference. He worked in London, I think it was the Abbey National, and it was the time when there were bomb scares going off, and in fact at Bartleycard we had various drills and things like that. And he said to me, do you know, Mum, you can just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Always thought of Maureen and the three boys. And in fact, I've been a lovely bracelet from Matthew and Mel with the three signs, the three stones from the three boys. And if anyone asks me, you know, how many children you've got, I always say 3. I think you should be proud of all your efforts, and Jeff.
Yeah. Hope so.
Sure, Dad is too, in his own way.
Do I have hope? I think at this stage it's too premature for me to be thinking too far in the future. You know, the application has been submitted. Where it leads after that, I don't know. But I'm just pleased we're here. It's submitted, and we'll see what the future brings. My wife's always said she sees me, you know, visions of me outside the High Court, and we've got it there. She can't really see further than that, but she just has this vision. She likes me wearing a shirt occasionally, which I've done today. You know, she just sees me outside the court. You know, am I going to get a haircut? No, I'm going to keep my hair. It's growing on me. It'd be fun just to annoy Mum. You know, she prefers me wearing a hat these days. But no, I like my hair. It's still that a little bit towards the system and my frustration, but no, it's growing on me. I'm going to keep it.
How should I put this? Yeah, of course governments lie, it's their job. But it makes you very cynical about the world. In my view, quite rightly so.
Our country took the wrong tack. They didn't investigate 9/11 thoroughly, and I think it's caused us to live in fear of something that we didn't fully understand.
I can't remember who said it. Somebody said, World War III will be fought with the most incredible technology, with the most incredible weapons of war. And World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. And I believe it.
Thomas Merton had a phrase that he coined called the unspeakable. Evil, so awful and almost unimaginable that it defied the ability of words to capture it. It's a void that exists even before uttering the unspeakable. Well, the void would be not talking about 9/11, that if we don't deal with it, then we can't correct it. The story can only last so long, however enduring this seems, that lies always need protecting. The truth doesn't.
When the dust settled, the glass and the metal, lies devastated, the screens still echo, every mind in America engulfed in fear.
Let me start again, right? God, this is like fucking outtakes, it's ridiculous, right?
When the dust settled, the glass and the metal, lies devastated, the screens still echo, every mind in America engulfed in fear. Welcome to the aftermath, the future's here. It was a September morning when everything changed. Ashes rained from the towers, Pentagon in flames, lives gone in a flash, loved ones and strangers. The fear of a boogeyman, a new world danger. They sold a safety, lied us into a war. Spy on your neighbors and lock your door. It was written, did PNAC have a plan for us? Lies in the White House, who can you trust? Evidence gone missing, bones and steel. Families want answers, the truth will heal. So much disinfo and outright lies. 2 decades later, and we ask why? Why was Tower 7 left from the report? Why, despite all the evidence and science ignored, we insist this purposely skewed the facts, smelling like a cover-up, a treasonous act. Unspeakable. The lies and deception, why the neglect and the truth is in question. The lies and deception, why the neglect and the truth is in question. The lies and deception, why the neglect and the truth is in question. The lies and deception, why the neglect and the truth is in question. Unspeakable.
Do you mind this being, well, frankly emotional?
It's great to feel peaceful. Everyone wants to feel peaceful, but I can't do it anymore. But I'm able to balance it. I'm angry. I'm always angry. I'm angry at this country.
I just want to try to do the right thing. That's all I would say.
20 years later, do you feel safer? Old towers gone, new skyscrapers, Homeland Security, the Patriot Act. Sold us into war, so I'm not making it back. Wasn't about Bin Laden or keeping it safe. Money, power, and oil leading the chase. Color-coded warnings keeping us awake. 24/7 news cycle making us hate. Became us against them. Every Muslim suspect, his trust runs thin. NSA spying on us, this just in. Any freedoms you have, yeah, that must end. It's the new norm. Panic on the dance floor, the barrel's still warm. Terrorist threats screaming loud from the horn. So stressed out we didn't have time to mourn. Unspeakable. The lies and deception, why the neglect and the truth is in question. The lies and deception, why the neglect and the truth is in question. The lies and deception, why the neglect and the truth is in question. The lies and deception, why the neglect and the truth is in question. Unspeakable.
Never really exposed my feelings publicly like this in this venue. But I'm doing it because I want to.